Well, for the third time in 4 games, the offense has been a no-show. Do they really keep getting goal lead, or is there something deeper happening here? Let's discuss on today's Locked on Blue Jackets.
You're Locked on Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked on Blue Jackets, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked on Blue Jacket is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. I also have to let you know today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Let's talk about last night's game, because here's the thing. They were not good last night. There were some things that I liked about the game, but they are kind of few and far between. Obviously the Blue Jackets they lose 4-1 to the Colorado Avalanche. Admittedly, a very good team, probably the best team that they faced so far. In fact, almost definitely the best team that they faced so far. So losing is not a surprise, right? But the frustration is that because they lost 2 games that they shouldn't have already this season, that now you're 1-3 to start the year. Your offense has disappeared for 3 out of those 4 games. This is the third time in 4 games that you've scored 2 or fewer. The second time in 4 games that you've scored 1. And that is a problem, right? Partially, it's that they've been facing very good goalies, but I'm also at a certain point, I'm like, okay, how many times does a team get goalied in a row before you just kind of admit that there's a finishing problem, right? So I want to talk about the finishing problem. I want to talk about the goaltending for the Blue Jackets. I want to talk about regression, when that's going to happen. I want to talk about how this is kind of the opposite to last year's team and how that's, again, good in some ways and bad in some ways. But on paper, this looked like a bad game, right? So the eye test also showed that this looked like a bad game. They just kind of looked outclassed. And I think the numbers back that up. No one particularly had a very good game in terms of the advanced stats. I'm just pulling up the numbers right now because I had the wrong tab open. Locked on Blue Jackets bingo card if you have it. But the only player to finish above 50% in terms of shot attempt share was Dmitry Voronkov. And he finished with 16 shot attempts for and 15 against while he was on the ice. And that was at 5-on-5. So we're not taking power plays into account there. That was the only player to finish with a positive shot attempt share while he was on the ice. That's it. Some players had, better attempts at creating the offense. Like Charlie Coyle had the best night, technically speaking, at creating offense / giving up offense. He didn't create a ton, but he also gave up basically nothing. And then Matejchuk also had a very good night in terms of, again, didn't create a lot, but didn't give up anything. They had, I believe, the lowest of the expected goals against, barring Jay Christensen, who played about 5 minutes. 737 of even strength, which is kind of maddening to me. And I noted at the time, before I talk about just kind of the game as a whole, I want to talk about something that I noticed, is that I saw that we were getting a handful of Werenski-Matejchuk shifts, which I was like, oh, I am intrigued by this. Tell me more. But I do genuinely think it was just that they were double shifting Werenski, so they didn't have to play Christensen, which is kind of, again, maddening because he was the best goalie, the best defenseman, in preseason. I think the games that he's played so far, which again haven't been a lot, he's played this game and last game, but I think he's been good in them, and I don't understand this reluctance to play him because clearly no one else is playing well. Again, when you've got the Provorov-Severson pairing on the ice and doing functionally nothing in that time. Like, the only player that gave up, and again, Dante Fabro had another struggle game, but like the only player that gave up more than Provorov or Severson was Dante Fabro. Like, they were by far the weakest pairing. They gave up a ton and created basically nothing, which was kind of a real difference to what we saw for the first couple of games, especially from David Severson. But now it kind of looks like they've reverted to type, and partially I think that was probably that they got hard matched against the McKinnon line, which I'll talk about the line matching in a second here. But like, just a really poor performance from everyone. Like, again, looking at the numbers from the last game, the Devils game, which I do think they should have won based on, their play. I know some people disagree. And based on the Nashville game, which they definitely should have won. This very much felt like no, they didn't get goal lead. This was just a better team. And the Blue Jackets finishing wasn't there. Like, yes, Scott Wedgwood was very good, 22 out of 23 saves, but it wasn't like again, I'm thinking about last year when they lost to, for example, the Sharks, because Vitek Vanacek made 49 of 50 saves, or 50 of 51 saves, or something insane like that. Like, that's getting goal lead. This was just getting outplayed by a better team. The Avalanche outshot them by 13, so basically a 50% increase, give or take, on shots. Outscored them, basically ran around doing whatever they wanted all night, and the Blue Jackets didn't really have an answer. I mean, I do think partially that's because they decided that they wanted to hard match the Coyle line against the McKinnon line. So they had the new look lines, obviously, which lasted about 2 periods before going back to sort of normal. But they decided that they wanted Jenna, Coyle, and Olivier playing against the McKinnon line instead of matching your number one center, Monahan, against the McKinnon line. And I on the one hand, I understand where that's coming from, because in theory that frees the Monahan line up to do something else. And if you can get the checking line of Coyle, Jenna, Olivier to kind of do their best in gumming up the works and shutting down McKinnon, then that, like, fine. However, didn't work, y'all. Like, I was gonna say quiet-ish night for McKinnon. Didn't get on the score sheet. Only had 2 shots on goal, but like, it didn't really work in terms of A, shutting that line up, and B, because I believe the Makar goal was on the McKinnon line. So, like, again, it's essentially the McKinnon line was who that goal was. I don't remember. Brock Nelson was one of the goals. Valenchushkin was 2 of the goals. So that, I believe, was the second line at work. But my point remains, right, that yes, they managed to shut specifically McKinnon up, but they didn't really do a lot to shut that line down. And it also, the Monahan line also was not great in this game, right? Like, if I go from just specific on ice stuff to what the forward lines looked like, the Monahan line was really not very good. Again, the only line as a group that really kind of did anything was the Voronkov, Fantilli, Sillinger line, which had 10 shot attempts, 4 and 5 against. So again, didn't create a ton, but didn't give up anything. Compare that to the Johnson, Monahan, Marchenko line, which had 3 shot attempts, 4 and 13 against. So partially, I think this was, again, just that the Avalanche are a very good team, but also it was a real sign that, these new lines don't work, which I think the best example of that is the fact that Kromachenko was on the ice with 10 shot attempts, 4 and 26 against, and was, I think, like, the second weakest player in terms of, like, the only player that had a lower shot attempt share than him was Ivan Provorov. Like, that top line was the four worst players on this team last night, according to shot attempt share, were Monahan, Johnson, Marchenko, and Provorov. So, like, again, proof that that line isn't it. I know I talked just about how I was intrigued by that line, and like, I'm not opposed to seeing it again, potentially against a less lethal team, but it wasn't working last night. Took them 2 periods to realize that. I thought the third period was a little bit more spirited, shall we say. It was more even as well. The Blue Jackets managed to only be outshot by 1 in that period. But I don't know how much of that was the Avalanche were just kind of content to sit on a lead and trust their goalie, and how much of that was the Blue Jackets that pushing and playing a little bit better. Either way, like, the third period I liked, but the first and second periods I thought were really, really quite poor. Let's take a quick break, and then when we get back, I want to talk about goaltending for the Blue Jackets specifically, but probably goaltending in general. We'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I'm going to tell you about FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right, pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Just find the heaviest favorite you can. Right now, that seems like the Carolina Hurricanes, who will never lose again. Put $5 on them winning a game. If it hits, you're going to get $300 that you can use on whatever you want, whether that's parlays, whether that's player props, even if you like follow along during games and you think there's going to be a big comeback coming, then you can do that on FanDuel as well. And it makes watching the games a little bit more exciting when you've got something riding on the action. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the app today and get started. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. I want to talk about the goaltending for a little bit, because here's the thing. I feel like, and this kind of goes hand in hand to something I was thinking about basically before I hit recording, is, yeah, the offense is a problem right now. Is it going to revert? Yes. However, it's been 4 games and the offense is kind of developing a concerning pattern, right? It will regress. It absolutely will regress. However, we need to talk about it right now and, figure out how to start that regression. Because I think if you just kind of sit there and hope that eventually your goals will start going in, then that's kind of a problem, right? But on the flip side, the Blue Jackets have had very good goaltending to start the season, right? Like, and Elvis was very good again last night. He had a real, like, the first goal I am not going to give to him. I think the first goal was tough. That's Cale Makar's got a great shot, right? That's just an elite shot that I don't think he saw very much of. Second goal, I'm not thrilled about. That was a real, why is your 5-hole open right now moment. And the third goal was just kind of bad timing, right? But he made 32 of 35 saves for a 914 save percentage. And honestly, again, for Elvis, I've talked all summer about how what I want from Elvis is like 900 goaltending essentially, and so far he's giving us that and more, right? Like, if I flip over, the Blue Jackets have got a 912 in goaltending collectively. I'm not sure how that works, because Elvis has a 920 and Jet has a 932, so I don't understand how the average of that is 912. But again, through 4 games, both of your goalies have got a 920 or above, which is ideal, right? Like, this is the least of our worries. And I think that there's a lot of me anyway that wants to be like, well, it's a small sample size. Let's see where they are in 10 games, in 20 games, etc., right? But I feel like if we're going to criticize the offense for disappearing for 3 out of the 4 games, then we have to give the goaltending credit for being there for 4 out of the 4 games so far, right? Like, I think that 914 is the lowest of any goalie for the Blue Jackets so far this season, because I believe Elvis had better stats. Yeah, so Elvis has had a 923 and a 914 so far. And Jet has had a 938 and a 930-ish, or a 926, I think. So a 914 in this game, again, against a very good Colorado Avalanche team, is like this was the worst goaltending game for a Blue Jackets goalie so far, and it was still really very good, right? Still a 914, which for Elvis feels incredible, right? So do I think the goaltending will regress? Yes. However, I do think that the offense will also kind of regress. And regression is not necessarily the word I want, because regression sounds bad, right? Like if you regress, then it means that you take steps backwards. But what I mean is regress to the average, right? Regress to the mean. So the goaltending will probably slide slightly more towards league average. The offense will also slide slightly more towards team average. I'm pulling up the just the general team numbers so far, which is that the Blue Jackets are currently sitting 24th in the league in expected goals for, but they're also sitting 24th in shots for percentage, so close to 4%. So like sitting in the bottom half of the league in creating offense and like shooting and whatnot. And they're also sitting, if I can pull up the numbers, where are they? They're also third in the league in save percentage right now. The only teams with a better save percentage than them, the Washington Capitals and the New York Rangers. And the New York Rangers, I think, is almost entirely the fact that Igor Shesterkin has decided that he's winning games and everyone else can come along if they want to. So currently have a, what did I say? They've got a 964 save percentage. This is all at 5-on-5, by the way. So we're not taking the penalty kill into account here, even though, again, the Blue Jackets at even strength have been excellent, and at the penalty kill have been abysmal. The Blue Jackets are shooting below league average significantly. Like some teams are shooting way above team average, but the Blue Jackets are currently sitting at 17th in shooting percentage and 3rd in save percentage. So yeah, that will even out, right? Like I expect the Blue Jackets to get closer to about 12% shooting, and I expect the goaltending to drop. But I do want to give credit to, speaking of special teams, the Blue Jackets managed to kill a whole penalty last night. Now, the bar on the floor is low. I would argue that potentially it's under the ground right now, but they did manage to kill a penalty. Power play looked atrocious. Like I was watching it and I was like, this is not good. It's not doing okay. But they managed to get through a game without allowing a power play goal, and frankly, that's all you can ask for, right? And I do feel a little bit kind of monkey paw about it, because I did tweet before the game that like the goal for this game should be kill literally any penalty. Don't let Gavin Brindley score. End of. And I guess the monkey paw curled and was like, oh, so that's all you want is no penalty, like a decent penalty kill, and also no Gavin Brindley goal. We can do that for you. And then the 3 other guys scored goals, and the Blue Jackets lost 4-1. But if they can continue to crawl out of the hole that they've put themselves in with special teams, especially the penalty kill, then things are going to start to improve, right? Because I do think, again, the fact that the Blue Jackets stats look so bad, especially on paper, is because of how bad the special teams have been, right? Like, again, even with that penalty kill, they're still sitting dead last in the league in penalty kill effectiveness at 53%. And I believe they're sitting, like, if not dead last, then close to in power play percentage as well. So, yeah, they're 30th in the league on the power play right now and 32nd on the penalty kill. So, like, again, if they can get up to literally league average, if they can get, a 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th-ish ranked power play or penalty kill, ideally both, but please at least one of them, then things are gonna turn a corner, right? And again, the power play finishing is kind of burying them, but also the 5-on-5 finishing is burying them. This was the first game that the 5-on-5 that they were outscored 5-on-5 though, which I do think is kind of funny. They basically have allowed no 5-on-5 goals before this game and allowed 3 in this game, so I believe that brings them to 4 5-on-5 goals that they've conceded all season, and again, like 3/4 of them in this game. So not Not a great game for basically any standard, but I did want to shout out the fact that, hey, they did manage to kill a whole penalty in this game, which it feels like they haven't done in like a million years, right? Would love to see the power play come to life, but if they manage to crawl out of the penalty kill hole, then it very much could be worse, right? So I guess the question now becomes like, okay, we're 4 games in. Obviously, that's still a very small sample size, but when will the regression to the mean start to hit? Because I think a lot of people, myself included, are getting kind of twitchy about that. So I want to talk a little bit more about just kind of regression, when I think it's going to happen, how I think it's going to happen, that kind of thing in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I'm going to tell you about Game Time. Hockey season's here, and nothing beats being in the arena for those opening games. But let's be real, getting tickets can be such a headache. Between waiting in queues, surprise fees, prices that jump right before checkout, it's super easy to get frustrated, but all you want to do is cheer on your team. And that's where Game Time comes in. The app that gives fans the advantage. It's your ultimate life hack for scoring amazing NHL tickets fast, easy, and stress-free. I used Game Time recently to grab Leafs tickets for under $100 per person, which, frankly, for Leafs tickets is incredible. I got to see one of the funniest Leafs games that I've seen in recent memory, and it was great. There was no hidden fees at checkout. I could see exactly what the view from my seat looked like before we bought tickets. And the zone deals was a game changer. All we did was pick a section, and Game Time picked our seats. And we got great seats, great view, a shockingly normal price for a Leafs game. So why don't you do what I did? Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. I want to talk about regression because here's the thing: is I don't think that this is a case necessarily of they're pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, and the floodgates are about to open. They're about to score 1 billion goals, right? Like last year. And here's the thing: that this is the opposite to last year's team, right? Where they basically kind of scored at will. One of the best 5-on-5 teams in the league, despite the fact that they weren't creating enough to sustain that scoring. And we knew that regression was going to come, right? But the hope was that the young guys would take enough steps forward to outdo that regression. And so far, like, the coaching staff, I think, is mostly at fault here because I don't think the young guys, Kromachenko aside, have really been put in a position to succeed, right? Like, Matejchuk, buried on the third pairing. Fantilli can't get a winger to save his life. Johnson buried on the third line. Like again, Voronkov, I will say yes, he's been put in a position to succeed. Like the top line again has really been the best line, and it's not close, right? But you got to finish that. You got to finish that second line out. You've got to put Fantilli in a position to succeed. And for me, that means putting him with Kent Johnson. Like I don't understand why this seems to be such a difficult concept. I know that they like Johnson and Coyle playing together, but Ken Johnson's a top 6 forward, should be played like a top 6 forward, and you have to give Fantilli literally anything to work with. So many times last night, I saw Fantilli do all of the hard work and get into the zone and then just kind of pass the puck off to someone, and then the play would go the other direction, and they'd have to start again. And like I do think that Fantilli is more of a finisher than a playmaker. But right now, he's doing all of the heavy lifting on that line and getting basically nothing in return, right? And whether that's the Cole Sillinger effect, the Buchanan effect, like I do think that one of those guys has value on that line, but you need to have Fantilli, Johnson, and one of Jenner or Sillinger. You can't have both on the second line. It's not working. It didn't work last night, even when they flipped and added Voronkov, and I didn't think that line was going to work. And shockingly, again, like that was kind of the best line of the night, which did surprise me. And I don't know how much of that is due to the Voronkov effect. I don't know how much of that is due to the fact that Fantilli's just decided that he's going to try and do everything himself. But that line, it didn't work for me. It didn't work on the ice. It didn't pass the eye test. It didn't pass. Like it passed the stats a little bit, but and again, it was the best line of a group of really weak lines last night. So You gotta fix that. And I do think that, again, to go back to what I wanted to talk about, which is regression, like my guess is that this can't continue much longer. And I do think something's going to break through. And you can see Fantilli's pushing. He's getting close. Like Marchenko is getting close. I know that people have been getting on Sean Monahan's back for not registering a point yet in the first 4 games, but he's been pushing, right? Like, again, he was one of the best forwards on the ice against the Devils and just got real unlucky, right? The points will come. My guess is that I don't know. I'm not really a betting man, and I don't want to give like a game. But if this continues for the next like 2 or 3 games, then that's, to me, is starting to get into worrying territory of like, oh, maybe this won't regress. Maybe this is just who they are. Because I feel like 10% of the season, I think, should be a big enough sample size for you to say, okay, this is a trend, right? So they've played 4 games. I will give them another 4 games before I personally really start worrying. I'm already kind of worried, especially about the offense and the fact that they can't seem to buy a goal. But I'm going to give them another 4 games, I think. And if we're 10% of the way through the season and all of this is still happening, then we're going to have to start having conversations about, is this a personnel issue? Is this a coaching issue? Is this a systems issue? Is this just the worst luck you've ever seen since the Blue Jackets of like 3 seasons ago? All of that stuff. So I do think regression will happen soon. I think probably like it's tough because the schedule coming up is weird, right? Like, and when I say weird, I mean they've got to play the Lightning next, who are in a weird place at the minute. Like, I opened the stats instead of the standings, but like the Lightning are struggling at the minute as well. Like they're 1-2-1 to start the season, which is extremely unlightning like of them, right? Then they play the Dallas Stars, who are 3-1 to start the season and doing very well. They just lost their unbroken streak. I think I can't remember who beat them, but they was it the Canucks that just beat them maybe? But like that's a good team, right? The Lightning, even though they're struggling, is a good team. That's 2 good teams that you've got to face back to back, right? And then you've got to face the Pittsburgh Penguins, who are playing way above their means right now. They're 3-2 to start the season. They just beat the LA Kings in a comeback attempt. And then I think you've got to play the Capitals as well, who are 3-1 to start the season. And I was really hoping the Capitals would like regress hard this season. It doesn't seem to be happening yet. So like that's 4 tough games coming up. Like again, the Capitals and the Penguins have had the Blue Jackets number in the past. Tampa Bay, who you can never really count out, and Dallas, who is still, again, a very, very good team. So the next 4 games coming up are not going to be like a cakewalk or anything, but the Blue Jackets really need to get something out of them because you want to be, like, by the time they're 10% of the way through the season, I want to see 500 or better. And right now that means winning, I think, 3 of the next 4 games, which is going to be a tall ask. But if the goaltending stays where it is and they get even a little bit more finishing, things are going to start looking a lot better. Because I do think it's not that they're playing badly, generally speaking. Apart from this most recent game, I do think like they were awful in this game against the Avalanche, kind of to a man, right? But I think for the most part, they've been playing well. They've been doing good things and have kind of not been getting rewarded for it. So if they continue the play of the first 3 games, then they'll be fine. If they start to slide like they did in last night's game, then again we're going to see more problems, and we're going to have to advocate for giving the goalies even more knives than we already are. But that's, again, I've decided that this is not a problem that I'm going to worry about too much until we get 8 games in. I reserve the right to change my mind about that if we get like a couple more games in and they continue to look like lifeless and outclassed by the 1-3 Tampa Bay Lightning, etc., and the Pittsburgh Penguins, who were supposed to be challenging for McKenna this year. But that's kind of what I've got. Terrible game. It happens, Yes, the offense is starting to become a problem, but I'm kind of willing to write this game off as, bad game. Happens. Feels like every time the Blue Jackets are doing something where they, like, honor a player or they have a special event or something, they lose. But that's mostly me being flippant, I think. But I am really expecting a much, much better effort on Saturday against the Lightning. They are honoring some of the 25th anniversary alumni. They've got a bunch of ex-Blue Jackets coming into town, so maybe we'll see again another scheduled loss, but we'll deal with that when we get there. And I am going to do a bonus episode. I'm going to come back and do a Saturday episode for you where we talk about tomorrow's game. We'll break that down. We'll talk about the Lightning in a little bit more detail. Hopefully, we'll have some better line combinations to talk about. Dean Everson, if you're listening, please, I'm begging. But we'll talk about all of that in tomorrow's episode. Thank you for listening to this episode, making it your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms. We're over on YouTube, and you can find us on Twitter at LO_Blue Jackets. You can find us over on TikTok now, I believe, which I don't pretend to understand, but we do exist there. Just search for Locked On Blue Jackets, and you can find me on Blue Sky at JAKOBFORSTER. Thank you once again for listening. Like I said, I'll be back tomorrow to preview the Lightning game, but until then, make sure you stay locked on.